Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Raw is Ginger.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I feel like I'm having some deja vu here. I think I've just said all this.
We've said similar, but as usual, it's like a different timeline. We'll
It
have to say
seems-
similar, but there'll be a different
It
outcome.
seems to be it's like a multiverse type thing.
No, this is 2 weeks after we done the last one.
Exactly, but at the time of this recording, it's another multiverse where
Yes.
we've said something completely different.
So, welcome to Raw is Ginger, and we're still here for us. For you, it's been God knows how long.
Yep, we hope you've enjoyed your couple of weeks. Like, I will probably still just be sitting here, like crying in real time by the time this comes out. So we're carrying on with the Mount Rushmore thing because we seem to enjoy it. The setup seems to be quite good. I'm still leaving it to you guys to decide it because you two are the experts. I'm just the guy with the equipment. So, but in this case, for the Mount Rushmore, that's why usually the experts can't even say the second word. What are we jumping into this time, Kev?
Well, we've done singles, we've done tag teams. We're going to move on to stables, and we'll throw it over to Toner for his
Right,
Mount Rushmore of stables.
firstly, I'm going to say this actually became more difficult than I thought it was going to be because I initially thought, right, I've got 3 of the 4 in my head, that's fine. And then, you know, that way you familiarise yourself with stables that you've maybe forgot over the years and things, and then the name comes up and you go, oh fuck, yes, remember that?
Yep.
And that is exactly what started to happen. So, there is probably more honourable mentions than there is of
It's like my Mount
Rushmore.
Rushmore. I could have had another 2 Mount Rushmores.
But I'll jump right in and say the first one for me has got to be NWO. When you look at, yes, okay, when you look at the different companies and what that kind of meant, you know, you look at when they done the whole NWO black and white and everything else. But I'm talking about even if you look at Nash, Hall and Hogan, for example, that was so successful for what it was and what they were kind of tasked to do and what they wanted to do. The kind of pops for that when they'd come over was fantastic. Again, you look back and throughout the years in different companies, when you had that kind of mainstay of the NWO and then you had other people coming into it, it was always very successful. I personally think it's very difficult to talk about top end stables that not maybe everybody's going to agree with the people that get involved in it from time to time, but the impact it had across numerous companies, which I think, especially for a stable, can be quite difficult to have an impact in different promotions, and I think they definitely did. You know, when you look at, if we go for the example of the NWO coming back, or coming into, when them all coming back in the NWO to WWF, WWE, and what they created, I mean, they're getting into kind of WrestleManias, they're, you know, having feuds with kind of top stars. They literally just come in because of who they were at the top level. And, you know, week on week, every storyline circulated around them, around the feuds that they were creating. And I don't know about you, but for me, when these were building, there was excitement there because, you know, these were interactions. Even if you take away from the matches and just the interactions, these were interactions you wanted to see. You kind of thought about, you know, for a long time. And you think about, I don't know, about being younger and going, what would your dream kind of wrestling lineup look like in matches? And some of these are guys you would have, like, you know, pitted against each other and the interactions. So yeah, for me, NWO kind of has to be there.
Kev?
Oh no, I completely understand that. I mean, if it wasn't for the NWO, WCW would have went out of business like 10 years before it did. But again, if it wasn't for the NWO, WCW might not have went out of business. But when you look at everything they've done, I mean, 90% of WCW was part of a version of NWO at one point. It was literally the biggest stable in the world. Because at one point there was like 95 people on a roster that had 200. So that's the majority almost of the roster, because there was people that would fight with the NWO against other people, but they weren't in the NWO, so they were still associated with them. So you can't really not have them up there, no matter what version it is.
Was NWO in yours?
I think NWO would have been mine, yeah. They would have to be.
So, like with the last one, we have guaranteed at least one that is a joint. So, Toner, your second one?
So my next pick for me is a team that I loved, and a stable that I loved, and I felt probably underutilised. Ministry of Darkness. For what it's worth, the way that I would kind of have envisioned it would have been great for Taker's later years to kind of recreate something like the Ministry of Darkness and still, be there with the impact that he's got and the aura that he creates and have his kind of minions, if you like. But I felt like for the time period of the Ministry of Darkness, I mean, some of the stuff they'd done, they were involved in, I mean, you talk about pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
And they'd very much done that. I mean, Big Boss Man, putting people up in a crucifix. For me, I felt, I mean, you look at the people that were in this as well, and again, for me, no better person to lead that than The Undertaker. Now, irrespective as to whether I agree with where it went after that, your whole corporate ministry thing, I didn't really like that too much. But the Ministry of Darkness, I felt for the time that it was there, and again, in a similar sense to the NWO when we spoke about it, in the way that there was so many people throughout that get involved in this, that were part of this, but they were so heavily involved, week on week, the kind of major storylines, but a lot of big names. Now, earlier on, 2 weeks ago, we spoke about Edge and Christian. They were involved in this, and you kind of get through in the amount of people that were involved now in that kind of element, and I just thought it was changing for the times because it pushed a lot of boundaries that probably hadn't been pushed before. Some would maybe argue took it too far.
Yeah.
But for me,
I mean, in fairness, like kidnapping the boss's daughter, then it turns out it's actually been organised by the boss himself.
Yeah, as I say, I didn't agree with every element of it, but the whole kidnapping storyline I thought was fine until it turned out who arranged it, and I thought it was a bit of a disappointment. But I just feel for what they brought in that space of time, and it was the same again. Every big name in one capacity or another was working with them. Now, whether that be that they were going into matches against, or whether it be that they become part of the ministry, for that period of time, everybody was involved, and it was what everybody was talking about. That music, how many Raws or SmackDowns finished with them annihilating people, hanging people, sacrificing people. And I just thought it was fantastic. For me, probably I put it there because I wanted this to have been kind of brought back for how The Undertaker kind of ended this whole time. But I think it could have been used a lot better and for a lot longer. But again, I just absolutely thought the work that they created there was fantastic.
Kev?
Personally, I wouldn't have put them on. They would have been in my honourable mentions, but I don't think they had enough time before they changed to the corporate ministry to have had as big an impact as they should have. They should have just scrapped the corporate ministry thing, just have the corporation. Done that. Why did they have to go in there? And then, I mean, they were fighting with WCW and the NWO at that point. So it's like, oh, we need a big stable. We need the owner of the company in this stable. And I think it was a bit rushed putting the corporate bit in. It's like, that sort of took me away from that. Sort of, right, I can't be bothered with that anymore.
Right, well that's fine, like, because it was the same deal. We'll pick about the ones that you would probably replace with, but Torna will go into your third one for your stables.
So I will say as well, with them, this was when I had a few, the Ministry of Darkness was when I had a few other kind of groups there, and I thought, them out and put them in. But in a personal front was why they'd went in. My next is got to be DX. I think it becomes very difficult not to have them there, because when you think of the years that DX did go for before, you know, the kind of, if you like, the full members were all kind of there, they went for a long time. And, you know, at one point, Triple H wasn't the main man in DX, it was Michaels. And what they kind of done together, and even when they had kind of come back together, and then during other times when you've got X-Pac, you've got Billy Gunn, you've got Road Dogg, you've got China, and then throughout the years there was a few that kind of jumped in and joined DX for shorter periods.
Owen Hart was one of them, wasn't he?
And
Oh, no, Owen Hart was the Nation. Sorry, my apologies.
Because they had Kane and there was Tory.
Stephanie kicked about it because of the Triple H element. Tyson, remember, was kicking about with his DX stuff on for a while. So there was a few, but if you just look at the kind of main stable and what they'd done as well, because again, in regards to entertainment value, they offered so much in what they were doing, but also in-ring work. I mean, I think individually, every one of them had great impacts and great matches. In-ring, I mean, you just look at the kind of championships between all of them. Now, if you look at points where you had the tag team champion, the next part was a tag team champ for a while, yes, but European champ for considerable lengths of time. You had intercontinental titles kicking about them. You had world titles kicking about them. So I think when you collectively look at all the belts that these guys have had throughout their careers and throughout their time in DX as well, what they've done within it, and it's the same again, everybody was on their feet when that theme tune hit. And then again, a lot of the storylines they get involved in and became a kind of very big part of what was going on. And then they pushed boundaries, but in a different way, I think, for what you can and can't say, as opposed to what you can and can't do.
That whole presidential thing where they read everything that the network didn't want them to say. So I'm just going to read this word for word.
Yeah, that one as well. And even the things that, you know, there was some things that they were like pushing the boundaries with. I mean, for example, drugging Stephanie and marrying her when she's like, you know, drugged up. That was certainly something that wasn't really. Yeah, I know they tried to ritually sacrifice her at another point, but she always seemed to be involved in things that were like, you shouldn't do that to, oh wait, it's Stephanie McMahon, something bad's going to happen to her.
I thought that was how every kind of wedding happened. You just drugged the woman up.
No, that was just mine.
But I think they were involved in so much, and when you look at longevity, you know, the longevity that they offered, and then even there was times where DX wasn't there, but then when they came back, they were always heavily involved in some element. So for me it was very difficult not to have them there.
Kev?
I can't disagree with that. I mean, for everything they've done, and it was over like 20 years where they started it, and then when they both retired, because Billy Gunn's still wrestling away, but everybody else, they've all retired. Although X-Pac looks ring ready, he looks like he's going to come back.
Unbelievable.
And
waiting for that call.
Definitely. I mean, AEW will be.
Oh, you've got to imagine.
Right, let's go.
That's what a lot of these guys have done. AEW's kicking about.
Let's go.
I'm getting ripped.
But I can't know how like DX on, especially like even like when it was Triple H and Shawn Michaels when they come back in like the 2000s and stuff, and they were doing all the comedy stuff with the Hornswoggle and that. I thought that was fantastic. The little people's go up, and then just sitting there getting beat up by Hornswoggles.
Right, so that is 3 out of 4. So your final one, Toner.
Final one, again, a bit here. I remember watching all the years ago, and it was the first stable that I properly get right into, and it was the Nation of Domination. And I think when you look at what they offered at the time, you know, they were brutal. I mean, people forget, you know, when you look at Farouk, who is probably a lot of the time remembered for APA, and, you know, kind of kicking about and going, damn, every so often. But he was very much on the mic. His mic work was great. He was the kind of top man there, and was a brutal character. You then again look at Mark Henry, D.O. Brown, Godfather, you know, for how we remember kicking about there as well, and then obviously The Rock coming through, which I think in regards to mic work was some of the best stuff when he come through, and you would see the kind of struggles between him and Farouk, and I thought it was fantastic. But they were a dangerous team, and okay, didn't go anywhere near as long as DX, but still held longevity for their time, and what they kind of done and offered, and again the titles that were held, the stories that they were involved in, their ability kind of in ring as individuals and as a team. I just thought it's very difficult to not have them there or thereabouts. But again, probably more of a personal thing. When I started to watch it, and this was the first kind of stable that I was like, well, I really like these guys, and was very invested.
Yeah. And they also pushed boundaries as well for a time that, you know, a lot of those things it was an all African American stable, which wasn't very well known at that time. So it was definitely something, having DX doing the things you can't say as well and doing that, it was a great time to have those type of stables. So I can understand that. Kev?
Oh, I can totally agree with that one. They would be one where I'd struggle to kick them out, but then it's like there's other teams that I want, so it's like they would be the team where it's like, I don't know, but I can completely understand where you're coming from with that one.
For me, and this is just because this has been all very interesting that you say, so the couple of ones that I had teetering was Evolution, the Click, and the Four Horsemen.
Yeah.
Right. So, out of those honourable mentions, because there was obviously one you were going to replace, were any of those on it?
It was the Four Horsemen. Everything that they done throughout all the territories. I mean, you can go back and watch like bits and bobs here and there, but a lot of their stuff was for the NWA when it was WCW, and like they're just brutal. I mean, Ric Flair, 5 seconds into a match, he's rigged. It's like you go in, oh, there's Ric Flair, I'm going to see some blood, because 90% of his matches is like, right, oh, I'm bleeding. He get kicked in the knee, but he's bleeding to the head.
Basically, like every professional footballer, like they get like one foul, like, oh my head, like you stubbed your toe.
And I think, and that was how, when I had kind of created the list, some of them were put in there for maybe more so my kind of remembering of watching it and what they kind of brought, but it was very close to the Four Horsemen coming in from Ministry of Darkness, and the Nation going out for Evolution, and which I think probably says a lot about Triple H as well, when you think about two of the most kind of successful stables throughout, you know, the last 20 odd year, him being very much at the forefront of both.
And the same with Ric Flair as well, Four Horsemen and Evolution. Well, it just shows you, like, well, I don't think Evolution would have worked without those two, because they were both seasoned with stables.
I mean, I agree. I think you struggle to imagine that working without them both being there, because when you had at the kind of time with Orton and Batista being a bit like younger and kind of rawer, having the kind of seasoned veterans there to
train them up and
through. I think kind of done a lot, but that was where I was teetering, and then allowed my kind of heart on it to take over my mind, and kind of went with that.
Mm. What about any ones that Toner hasn't mentioned? What were the ones that you had?
One of the names I'd be struggling to keep it off the list is the Bullet Club, because you think about everything they've done, mostly in Japan, but you see like bits of it here and there in the independents. You've seen a bit in the NWA, and you've started to see a bit starting to come in to AEW, because they're starting to bring in guys from Japan, and it's like, why haven't they been brought over to like the big companies in America to be pushed? Because the guys that they've got in are fantastic. I know they've got AJ Styles and they've had the Good Brothers, but they didn't utilise them properly as what they could have been.
Yeah, very true. And it does make you wonder, what you think, what later on in time, what we'll be coming back to, not necessarily this table, but a table and talking about the Bloodline, or the Judgment Day, or the New Day, what, and these types of things, or do you think it's like, do you think that could be for another generation to talk about for their Mount Rushmore?
I think it depends, and again, longevity, because the Bloodline, as great as that was when it first started, it's fallen at the wayside now, and I think we're all now just waiting for this to end.
Yeah.
The New Day, you know what, entertaining, and yeah, maybe through some injuries and stuff, would have still perhaps been at the forefront of a lot of things if it wasn't for injuries. And you look at Judgment Day, and I think if you kind of keep up in wrestling now, you're seeing cracks appearing, and you're wondering where's the slip up in that going to be. Whereas I think the difference when you look at DX and you look at these kind of stables back, where there was cracks and there was occasional headbutts and everything else, they always came back. They always kind of came back together, and they would kind of be there, and that was why. I mean, we talk about DX going for 20 years. There was feuds in amongst that between them, in some fantastic matches, but eventually they were kind of there. You just wonder if the likes of the Bloodline, the New Day, Judgment Day are going to do that. You know, is it going to be a case of when they split? And I think, personally, I think that's very much going to be it for the Bloodline in this part. I think we see the Usos at a point getting back together. I think we see maybe Solo going out and doing his own thing, and Reigns very much taking a step back. So it becomes difficult, I think, to then sit and bring them into conversations like this. But then, if you think about people having this conversation in 10 years' time, what real big stables has there been that have held longevity over a long period of time? Because, you know, we could fling in things like Right to Censor, now, which was great, but held no longevity, which was unfortunate.
They very much predicted the future, though.
But they held no longevity, so you can't hold them in a conversation like this. The same way, I mean, Nexus had actually, I think, all the potential to be fantastic, and then for whatever reason, Vince wanted to crush it, which even Wade Barrett in many interviews has said that he couldn't believe it, because they were meant to beat Cena, and then all these plans changed, and they knew that was going to be the end of it. You've seen so many kind of stables and groups throughout the years that could have really been something. And it's like when we spoke about the tag teams, now when you look at it, you've got your stables here, but none of them you can really think of, I think anyway, going to hold longevity, that you're going to sit there. Now DX, you know, if you're saying over 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, how many teams, groups, stables are ever going to be able to kind of use that?
That seems to be a thing with a lot of things, though. You look at like The Undertaker, it was a 30-year run. That's not going to happen. Now, it's never going to. I don't personally see it happen. I would love to be proved wrong, though. And it's the same kind of deal with tag teams and stables. Like, everything's so fast paced now.
I mean, I think as an individual to have a kind of longer run now, like the kind of 20, 30 year mark, is potentially a lot easier now when you think about, you know, if you look at somebody being in WWE for kind of 10 plus years and then moving over to another promotion, I think potentially as well they can stay at the top level for that length of time. But yeah, it seems to be now a lot, there's more of a revolving door. You know, it's right, okay, this stable is going great, merchandise is brilliant, fans are really involved. Then things maybe dip slightly and it's like, right, so how can we utilise this to the best of the ability to break that up, maybe have a feud in amongst it, whatever else, and stop that. And then whilst that's going on, we'll sit and come up with the next stable, the next group of guys that are going to come in.
Just when you're saying about that, I mean, the way they done the Shield, they brought them in just to brutalise everybody. Worked really well, but they didn't have enough time as a group to have the storylines and the build-up of all these other ones, because they broke them up with Seth turning his back on them. When they got back together, people were going mental about it. But it wasn't as big as what it should have been.
And it's like you look at the Wyatt family.
Yeah.
You know, some of, for me, the best written and entertaining stuff in a long time. You know, just the kind of the aura and the creepiness. And I know everybody always makes the comparisons to like the Undertaker and things like that, but I think it was more the comparison for me because those lights went down. This was going to get a bit creepy.
Yeah.
Which out with the Undertaker and probably Kane, they never really had a lot of. So when he'd come in and there was this stable, it was great. You know, the Wyatt family, I thought was fantastic, and it really had something. And then, as you say, with the Shield, I mean, they had built up all this tension between them, and then I remember when they're standing up on both aprons and they're looking to go kind of toe to toe here, and everybody's up on their feet, everybody's willing this on, and then everything kind of fell away at both sides.
Yeah.
And again, it's that revolving door that, you know, now just seems to be a continuing, whereas I think in the past, when things weren't working great, they kind of stuck with it and looked at different things to tweak, whereas I think now there's very much less patience for that because there's so many other options there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, and I think we have covered quite a lot of stables, even just ones that we've just talked about there. There's a lot more than probably the average viewer maybe thought could creep into it.
Yeah.
But again, it's about the longevity. I'd say that's a very good set of Mount Rushmore right there, that with the stables that we've got. Guys, once again, thank you so much. Until next time, everybody, I've been Ross Ginger. Good night.
Cheers.